The stage lights blazed across the vast auditorium as the crowd buzzed with excitement, waiting for the next contestant to appear. Then, slowly, a boy stepped onto the stage, his presence almost swallowed by the grandeur around him. He was small, his clothes simple and a little worn, but there was something in his eyes that held everyone's attention, a quiet fire, a hidden strength. He clutched the microphone so tightly his knuckles turned pale, his hands trembling with nerves he couldn't hide. The audience fell into a hush, whispers rippling through the rows as people leaned forward, curious to see what this boy could possibly bring. He looked down at the floor for a moment, gathering the courage to lift his head, and when he did, there was a flicker of determination in his gaze that pierced through the silence. The judges smiled warmly, sensing his vulnerability, but also the bravery it took just to stand there. The boy's heart pounded in his chest as though it might break free, yet he refused to step back. This was his chance, his moment, the one opportunity he had been dreaming of for years. The stage that had seemed so enormous now felt like a battlefield where he had to prove himself, not just as a singer but as someone whose story mattered. And with every breath he drew, he knew he was standing not just for himself, but for every dreamer who had ever been told they were too small to shine. That he took a shaky breath and lifted the microphone closer, his voice soft but steady as he began to speak. The words came slowly, each one carrying the weight of his life. He told the judges and the audience that he came from a small neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, where every day was a struggle to make ends meet. He shared how his father worked tirelessly but still barely earned enough to put food on the table, and how he himself sang on the streets, hoping that the coins dropped into his hand would help buy bread for his family. The crowd grew quiet, listening intently, as though the world had paused for him. His story wasn't one of pity, but of resilience. He spoke about how music became his refuge, a place where hunger, pain, and fear seemed to vanish, replaced by hope and possibility. His eyes glistened as he admitted that he often sang to his younger siblings at night, not just to comfort them, but to remind himself that dreams still mattered. A few people in the audience wiped their tears, touched by the purity of his honesty. The judges exchanged looks, realizing that the boy standing before them wasn't just another contestant, he was carrying the weight of his family's hopes on his shoulders. In that moment, the spotlight was no longer about competition, it was about humanity, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of a child who dared to dream against all odds. The music began to play, soft and uncertain, almost like a whisper in the vast hall. For a moment, the boy's voice wavered, fragile and timid, as though fear might steal it away. A few in the audience held their breath, wondering if he could carry the song. But then, something shifted. He closed his eyes, and as if reaching deep into the pain and hope inside him, he released a sound so pure, so powerful, it filled every corner of the theater. His voice rose like a tide, trembling with emotion yet steady with truth. Every note carried the story he had just shared, the hardship, the love for his family, the hunger, the unbroken dream. The audience fell silent, their doubt erased, their hearts pulled into his world. One woman in the crowd pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling as his voice soared higher. By the second verse, the boy was no longer shy or small. He stood tall, commanding the stage with nothing but his voice, his soul pouring out through each lyric. The judges leaned forward, their eyes wide, their expressions filled with wonder. His voice cracked slightly with emotion, but it only made the song more real, more human. The boy wasn't just singing, he was laying his heart bare, and every listener felt it. The performance had transformed from a simple audition into a moment of truth, where a child's dream touched every soul present. As the final notes of his song lingered in the air, the theater erupted into a wave of silence so deep it was almost deafening. Then, suddenly, the audience rose to their feet as one, clapping, cheering, shouting his name. Some wiped their eyes, overcome by the raw power of what they had just witnessed. The boy stood frozen on the stage, chest rising and falling, his small frame trembling from the release of everything he had carried inside. He looked uncertain, almost disbelieving, as if he couldn't tell if it was real. One judge pressed a hand to their face, tears streaming freely, while another clasped both hands to their heart, unable to hide the emotion surging within them. Then it happened, the unmistakable sound of a hand slamming down on the golden buzzer. In an instant, golden confetti burst from above, cascading like 1,000 tiny stars raining down over the boy. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, covering his face with his hands as the stage filled with shimmering light. The judges rushed toward him, breaking all formality, their eyes wet with tears of pride and admiration. They knelt beside him, pulling him into an embrace as though he were their own child. The crowd roared louder, cheering through their tears, the entire room united in joy. In that magical moment, it wasn't just about a talent show, it was about hope, about believing in the impossible, about a boy who turned his pain into triumph. The boy lifted his tear-streaked face as the golden confetti continued to fall, his small hands trembling as he clutched the microphone again. The judges stood around him, still emotional, their smiles glowing with pride and love. His voice cracked as he whispered words that silenced the crowd once more, "This isn't just for me. This is for my family, and for every kid out there who feels invisible. Dreams are real if you never give up." The audience gasped softly, then erupted into louder cheers than before, their clapping echoing through the hall like thunder. Strangers in the crowd embraced one another, moved by the purity of his heart. The judges nodded through tears, one saying softly, "You've reminded us why this stage exists." The boy pressed his hands to his chest, as though holding on to the moment forever, his smile breaking through the tears. The golden lights shimmered above him, framing his fragile figure like a beacon of hope. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just a poor boy from the streets, he was a symbol of courage, resilience, and the power of dreams. And as the music swelled and the crowd cheered louder, the world seemed to whisper the same truth: when kindness meets opportunity, miracles are born.